not just a viewer. I got this one, great. So I'm going to start reading. I need a title. So in the feedback file, I'm going to be prompting everyone to look at that list of things that I asked for in terms of design features for what counts as a blog for the Rap Rhetorics blog. So one of them is a catchy title, something that would appear in a search engine if people were searching for it, something that you could share on social media that people might be interested in clicking on. Any hoodle, this is a good image though, and I appreciate the link. So the Black Panther Party was founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who had been observing the nonviolent, oh man, I want to edit, it's hyphenated, the nonviolent protests that others in the Black community were taking part in to liberate themselves. Bit unclear, bit cluttered there. Newton and Seale concluded that the nonviolent tactics were never going to be successful, as violence against protesters and police brutality continued to plague the activists. While voices like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X are echoed loudly in today's media, the voices of the Black Panthers are kept more quiet. However, their presence is still heard throughout hip-hop. Fred Hampton discusses the challenges of the Black community still faces in the 1960s and how work is constantly being done to combat this. Okay, this is a pretty abrupt shift. Let me refresh here and see if I have editing privileges. Not. If I don't have anything specific to offer, here I do. This is how I like to write hip hop. I think it's a more common way, common way to present the term. But if I don't have something specific to offer, I'll just use the comment feature and say, need more clear transition between this idea and who Fred Hampton is. Okay, because you just plop in Fred Hampton here as if we're supposed to understand who that is and why it's important. So Fred Hampton discusses the challenges the Black community still faces in the 1960s and how work is constantly being done to combat this. What's jacked up here a little bit is the tense, because this is in the past and Fred Hampton is dead. So he's not actively doing anything, and these are events that already happened. So just be conscientious of how you're discussing different writers and different moments in history and make it clear, past, present, ongoing, not ongoing. He says, we, the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding, went into the valley knowing that the people are here in the valley, knowing that our plight is in the same plight as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemies are in the mountain, we're friends in the valley. And even though it's nice to be in the mountaintop, we're going back to the valley because we understand that there's work to be done in the valley. Okay, it's a pretty long quote, so you might want to offset it like a block quote, all right, just to show us this is quite a few lines of text. Right. And of course, if you were to stylize this on a real deal bloggity blog, you could do this in any number of ways on some kind of WordPress. You can like highlight this whole thing. There's usually like a quotation button, right, where it makes the text a little bit bigger. We call them like drop quotes or something. But anyway, this is a long one, so you need to set it off somehow. So notably, if you're in the same paragraph, which you are, you do keep the indentation to let us know that you're still working with this idea. And that's a big rule if you're doing always indented paragraphs. You would do it like this, okay, to show us that this is a continued idea from up above. But here, it's in reverse. Hampton is describing how strides have been made, but in no way is the fight over. So instead of celebrating the victories, they must go back into the fight, no matter how uncomfortable, until true change has been made. A later example of this, okay, so we're moving ahead. But one thing I wanted to say here is what I like is this is explaining what the quote says, right? Relating it to real events, describing how strides have been made, but in no way is the fight over. So that summarizes what Fred Hampton is saying here in this metaphor of the valley and the mountaintop, okay? So instead of celebrating the victories, right? So what? So this answers why is this quote relevant in the rhetorical situation? So instead of celebrating the victories, they must go back into the fight, no matter how uncomfortable, until true change has been made. All right, so then the things that bother me, though, is there's a small lack of specificity here. I want to be a little bit more specific about what are these small strides? What do you mean by fight? What are the small victories, right? And what kinds of fights are more uncomfortable than others, right? Until what is this vision of true change? So how can we be more specific about ideas like change, victory, strides, fight? Okay. Boy howdy. Look at all that. All right. And so one of the strategies that you should be employing specifically for this project, since ultimately what I'm asking you to do is a rhetorical analysis of a collection of texts that all share a common theme, is you need to be asking questions of design, audience, and purpose. So questions like who, what, when, where, how, why. Okay, so what kinds of strides were made in Fred Hampton's lifetime that he was referring to compared to now, right? In no way is the fight over in Fred Hampton's perspective, right? Because certain things like what were not yet achieved, okay? And that's going to really help you contextualize why a later writer like Tupac might invoke the Panthers in a different rhetorical situation in the early 90s, okay? Okay, so we're going to get through this one, and our next step is going to be to discuss if you were this student and you wanted to collaborate with the next draft, the next student draft that I'm looking at, how would you do it? How would you revise by combining your drafts, and what would some good strategies be? Okay, so let's continue with this one. A later example of this is Tupac's Panther Power. Tupac discusses how his history was kept from him, a direct correlation to the movement being kept quiet compared to other civil rights activists. Tupac shares his deep connection with the movement, however, as his mother, Afeni, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry, was a Panther. He describes how the nation has set his community back, and his willingness to stand up and fight is what has allowed him to succeed. So this repeated idea of fight, okay? Fight how? That's just a simple way of how to use some of those questions I was just telling you about. Fight how is what has allowed him to succeed, similar to the Panthers' beliefs. You haven't told us yet. What are the Panthers' beliefs? Okay. Common released a song for Asada. Okay, we have a pretty abrupt shift here. You're jumping right to another text. Common released a song for Asada in 2000. Asada Shakur was a Panther, blah, blah. Okay. The step on to Tupac. Okay. So don't bury the lead. If you want to use this as a transition, then set it up first. Something like this, right? Even without changing what you've written, if you just change the order here, that makes a little bit more sense. If you introduce this person, this real Panther, as a reason why Tupac would have been connected to these beliefs that you're going to tell me more about, in addition to his mother, right? Then you have a natural transition to Common's text, A Song for Asada. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. In 1977, Asada Shakur, was convicted of the murder of a U.S. trooper. Common raps about the incident, describing violence against defenseless and cooperating Black people by the police, as well as wrongful conviction with little to no evidence. You can be a little bit more detailed here because the devil is in the details, and truthfully, her story, these details are important to illustrate just how far members of the state with a capital S would go to silence radicals or members of the Black Panther Party through violent tactics. Okay, so I'm just going to put explain the details a bit more. And maybe some direct textual evidence from the song itself, right? Because Common does a really good job of narrativizing this story. So you could just drop in 2 or 3 lines of the rap here and there to sort of hit us the highlights of what's happening here. The song ends with a powerful and striking statement from Asada. Yes, it does. And be clear here, this is intertextual. This is an interview clip describing how she doesn't know much about freedom because she has never experienced it. She says, "You're asking me about freedom? I'll be honest with you. I know a whole lot more." That is what she says, about what freedom isn't than about what it is, because I've never been free. This is the drive behind the Panthers' cause. Again, you got to tell me what this cause is. They understand that they're not afforded freedom like the white people in this country and have decided to take real action, like what? To gain their freedom because they understand it would not be given to them. Okay, we got a picture. We got another picture. All right, not so bad. So let me take a minute here to tell y'all something. I put a limit on this draft. I said it needs to be 1 page, this draft, okay? That page limit is for the draft only. And the reason I did that is to ensure that you created something small by yourself, something that's manageable for you to be able to then combine with another student, 2, 3 other students maybe, to create this collaborative, final, finished blog post, okay? Because it's a lot easier to take 1 page that you've written and combine it with another 1 page of another student instead of 5 pages you've written with 5 of someone else, okay, I think. So, but just know that if you feel like you were hindered, or if you had more to say or a lot more sources to incorporate, great. Now's the time to use them in your revision. This 1 page was just kind of prove to me that you had a pudding, right? Prove the pudding and then put the proof in the pudding or something like that. I don't know. Okay. So let's take a look at this next one and see if we can talk about how we might collaborate to revise if we were so inclined. And Rap Rhetorics blog post, mass incorporation. Okay. Informative read on mass. Okay. So technically this is a title, right? But again, think about someone searching something on Google, right? How are they going to find this blog post? This title is going to help people find your writing based on the topic that they're interested in. So give me a real title that is searchable. Real live title, SEO. Hopefully you all know what that is. If you don't, look it up. What font is this? One can often tell a country's priorities based on its judicial system, specifically those persecuted underneath it. That's good. In this case, we are looking towards the country with the highest rate of incarceration, the country that we live in now. Who, right? Think about your audience. Who is your audience? Only Americans? Not online. Okay, this is a blog post. That means it's inherently something that's digital, something that's available for anyone who has access to the internet. So don't make assumptions that they are just American. They're not. The country that has consistently brought down the citizens that simply want to live. This one is less specific than something like the highest rate of incarceration. You really had me going on this. I like how you were like, has the highest rate of this, has this and that, right? But this one is a little too vague. Too big. I like the yep, I like the one about the highest rate of incarceration. Who's in the chat? Oh, okay, good. You're posting stuff. Good. I like that. That country is the United States of America. Boom, dropped a mic on them. I bet they didn't see that coming. I bet everyone saw that coming at this point. But that's okay. I want to highlight those who have been abused by the system, specifically people of color / minorities. What? I want to highlight them. Why? What do you mean? Why? How? What do you mean? Seriously, I don't know. What do you mean highlight them? Okay. The highest rate, it's because now what I'm seeing is it looks like you're about to just dump a bunch of data that you found from some sources, which is okay, but we need We need a narrative. We need the rhetorical analysis as well, not just, here's some information. But let me see what you do. The highest rate of incarceration in terms of drug arrests is marijuana, a drug that is labeled as a Schedule 1 drug, drugs.com. A Schedule 1 drug is described as a drug that has high potential rates of abuse with no medical advantages given to the user. With that being said, being caught with any sort of Schedule 1 drug provides ground for arrest with the amount considered insignificant in the eyes of justice. All right. Okay. New information, right? That's not exactly, we haven't yet connected the idea of mass incarceration to drugs, but here we go. Besides this, the most important information to mention about what? Is how this began in the first place, and to analyze the intentions behind it. The consequences of persecution weigh heavily, not only on the one on trial, but the friends and family around them. Having a criminal record is a life-altering event, to say the least. You're less likely to get jobs or even be placed into a position of power and trust. You need a citation here. This is way more powerful if you have evidence. And I'm sure you do, you have evidence down here. That is the event that they're even let out of prison after serving their time. But those found guilty are even worse off, as the majority of those serving time in prison is 5 to 10 years. Boom! That's a lot of time. That's scary. All right, so this is an interesting visual, and I wanted to compliment the use of data visuals here. When I sent out those Halloween bingo cards, that was one of the sources that I recommend y'all take some time and try to explore. I think it's an interesting way to communicate research and to connect your, rhetorical. I'm just going to bounce back to this one. Your rhetorical analysis of speakers and writers in hip hop culture, right? How to connect that with these real world data points and these issues, these problems and issues that are more than just, a neat idea in a song that I like. And I'm not flashing back over to this one to say that this isn't what you were supposed to do. What I'm hoping for in the final draft is a combination of what is so great about this draft with the Black Panthers, and then what is so interesting about the data and the research that's being incorporated here. Okay, because synthesizing all of that is what makes for a really, really nice block draft. So let's see, sentences imposed, statistic based on prior month's data. Years, minimum range. Okay, so it looks like here's that 10 to 15 bubble, that 5 to 10, 10 to 15 thing that we were talking about. And then years max range. Okay, interesting. I would love some context. Now that you're aware of the numbers, here's the real kicker. No. This is a piece of evidence, okay? And let me bounce back to this draft, okay? We have a Fred Hampton quote here. We have an explanation of the quote. And then we have an evaluation of what it means. That's a piece of evidence, just like this is a piece of evidence. So you need to explain what this data visualization is telling us, and then evaluate how it contributes to the overall argument that you're making, or how it's rhetorically effective or ineffective, or maybe what information it gives us or doesn't provide us. Okay, explain this visual. Relates to your argument. Okay, that's it. That's the big thing. Okay, you can't just leave it hanging. Rates of Black and white marijuana possession arrests per 100,000 people. Okay, we see a discrepancy there. My extreme focus on marijuana is due to the fact that it's now in a slow process of destigmatization. But those who have been arrested on charges of it suffer a lifetime of drawbacks. That's true. This is a good place for more evidence. Mass incarceration of African Americans has destroyed countless families, communities, and the future of their people. This is melodramatic. You don't want to make it sound like this is something irreversible. It's not. This is a policy change that needs to happen, okay? A constantly increasing rate of incarceration toward a specific demographic will show incredible change in their actions as being treated as a target or something lower than a human being as dangerous to future generations. We need proof. Okay, you're kind of vamping here. What else we got going Mistreatment and behavior go hand in hand. The sanctions placed upon the African American community resulted in growing tension in modern America. You cannot build a system built to oppress and blame those who suffer underneath it. This is all good, like editorializing. You're commenting on this issue, which is fine. But what I'm not seeing is what appears to be happening down here is that textual rhetorical analysis that I've seen in the other drafts. So let's see if it comes up. Over time, this creates trailblazers, people of influence who speak out on their beliefs. And one of these trailblazers I chose to use as an example. One of these trailblazers, whoops, being suggestion then, is Lil Baby, prolific Atlanta rapper. The reason for this is because of his song, The Bigger Picture, which was released in the wake of George Floyd's death. Does what? Was a memorial, blah, 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 I don't know. Baby is associated with YSL, a record label that was recently exposed and under trial for a RICO case. The reason why this is important is rappers today are known for their lack of representation of their community and focused on the materialistic view of generation. For a rapper of his caliber to come out with genuine commentary on this with unspoken views. This seems, I know you just said it was relevant, but it doesn't sound relevant to what I care about, relevant. Because remember, we're on the Rap Rhetorics blog here, so we need to connect this hip hop text to rhetorical theory. So what that means for you is, here's a text by Lil Baby commenting on this real world situation, this rhetorical situation. And why? You say because he's a trailblazer, you say because it has some connection between drugs, mass incarceration, but you need to prove that with the textual analysis. Focus on textual and rhetorical analysis. Okay. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. Powerful yet simple statement. It's simply not only about the color of our skin, the prejudices and the intersectionality of today. What comes from generations of buildup of relationships of the American people from slavery to the exploitation of Africa. Okay, I'm going to pop back over to Zoom. How do we see connections, hypothetically, between those drafts that I just went over? Can you imagine a way to collaborate and to synthesize these two into something more united? I want to hear from y'all. What do we think? Anybody can chime in here. Doesn't have to be the authors.
Like, I don't know, maybe like one person does like analysis while the other person kind of explains it if they have like a similar topic or anything like that.
Okay,
so
cool.
Like if they're both discussing the same thing and it's like they both mention the same song, they can kind of collaborate on like the analysis, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's apply it to these two drafts that I was just going over. This one kind of started with telling us about the Black Panthers, gave us a Fred Hampton quote, talks a little bit about a Tupac song, and then connects Tupac's real life aunt to, you know, the Common song that was written about her. But the interesting thing is this second draft starts talking about issues, right? Like drug arrests and mass incarceration and sentencing and racial discrimination and discrepancies in justice in this country. And so the only text we get to here at the end is one that's not shared between them, but it's a text by a rapper about a real life person. So can you see any places to connect those two drafts? Like, how would you do it with those two without doing a lot of extra writing and research and stuff? I'm gonna open Laura's file. We've got it. Any ideas? Anybody? How would you connect those two drafts? Breaking my heart. Patty had some good ideas, I thought. But there's no shared text between these two. So where's the shared idea? Where can we link them? Aiden, you got any ideas?
I mean, like Song for Asada talks about injustice against Sawdust. You could connect that to what Trent was talking about.
Yeah, specifically where? Which part of Trent's draft?
I don't know specifically, or like maybe some of the statistics you could bring up.
Well, you know, I think the direct connection between A Song for Asada is the text that he gets to here, because this is a song for George Floyd. It's a song that memorializes someone. Now, Asada Shakur didn't die, but she was shot. She could have, right? So there's their rhetorical situations. Asada Shakur's real life in 1977 and George Floyd's demise in 2020 are in some ways quite similar. So that could be a point of linkage specifically, right? But then one advantage of Trent's draft, this one here, is it gives you some outside research that this one doesn't have. This one's so much more focused on rhetorically analyzing the text that you could take some of this stuff and intersperse it throughout as it connects to these more specific rhetorical situations. You know what I mean? And then look at there, you don't really need to add much else at all. And that would be a revised draft suitable to turn in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, Trent, let me hear from you. What kind of changes would you make if you were to collaborate and combine those two?
I guess I think I would change like the trailblazers that I chose, because I feel like the Black Panther Party goes more in depth towards like the struggles of African Americans and what they fought for.
Okay,
And
interesting.
mass incarceration, I feel like I could somehow relate to by just like explaining how Black Panthers are about like freedom, and in a way, like being incarcerated takes that away from you.
Yeah, and honestly, that would help Aiden. That would prompt you to do what I would kept asking and look back at their 10-point program. That's if you keep talking about like the Black Panthers belief system, what they believe in, cite that text, that they put it in text, their basic beliefs. And one of them, as Trent just correctly identified, is related to freedom and not being a legal slave in the criminal justice system. So that's good. Smart thinking. Okay. All right. I'm going to end this recording real quick.